What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So apparently Diddy is starting to wear the stress and effects of being incarcerated. Diddy looks noticeably thinner and grayer. Law and crime reporter Elizabeth Milner, who was present at the hearing, shared details about the rapper's appearance. Milner disclosed that Diddy appeared astonishingly thinner, which was to be expected given that he has been in federal prison for a couple of months. So, we're going to talk about that a little bit, whether this is actually, stress and mental stress for Diddy that is causing this, or if this is something that just kind of naturally happens and naturally occurs in prison. And we're just going to look at some of the psychological and physiological effects that being incarcerated can cause, not just to Diddy, but to anyone. And we're going to look at that a little bit. So, if you would, before we get started, please subscribe to the channel. I look at the analytics and I notice there's a lot of traffic coming through. And there's a lot of people that watch my videos, but then they're not hitting that subscribe button. I would love it. I would be greatly appreciative if you would hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a whole lot, and I work really hard. Okay, so yeah, that was according to law and crime reporter Elizabeth Milner. Now, I have to imagine that this for Diddy would be insurmountably harder and worse, given that he lived this lifestyle of luxury, this lifestyle of privilege, all of the nicest houses, all of the most beautiful vacation spots. If ever he went to a hotel, the nicest penthouses that the nicest hotels had to offer, right? Five-star meals. I mean, Diddy was a very wealthy individual that had access to all of these things. Okay. And so I think that he probably got to a point where he felt entitled to having all of these nice things. And I think that that consequently kind of played into his feelings of me, give me whatever I want, whatever Diddy wants, I get. You know what I mean? And I think he definitely is one of those people that his success and the things that he achieved and the kind of control, power, and amenities that it brought to him, I think definitely went to his head, and there are a lot of people out there that I think make it big time and that get quite a bit of money that keep that sort of thing in perspective, and they realize that I put my pants on one leg at a time. I shit and wipe my ass just like anybody else does. I bleed blood red just like anybody else in the world. I'm no different. I'm just blessed with a career that brings me a lot of money. Diddy was not that way. He is a person that absolutely felt like he was entitled to it. And I think achieving all of that success and getting all of those material things, and plus just, the power and the influence that came along with it, probably getting in places for free. I mean, that guy never paid to go into a club or pay, they were glad to have him there. That sort of treatment for him, I think, flipped a really, really bad switch in him, and it made him almost like a God complex. Like he's entitled to do these things. He's entitled to get whatever he wants, even if it's at the expense of hurting someone else. I think he got to the point where he literally had no empathy towards other people whatsoever, and not sympathy, empathy. Empathy and sympathy are two different things. Sympathizing, you actually feel sorry for someone, they're going through what they go through. Empathy is just having the ability to look at someone else who is in pain and acknowledge that that person is in pain, right? When you sympathize, that's when you acknowledge that they're in pain and then feel sympathy for and sad for them that they're in pain. So then you might, at that point, try to do something to help. And he didn't have either empathy or sympathy. And I think he's one of these people that success absolutely ruined him. So, with that said, now that all of those things are taken away from him and he's incarcerated, I think for somebody like him, it would make the incarceration infinitely worse, right? And I've read quite a bit of reports that say he's really sad, really depressed, really anxious, kind of moping. And so, I mean, you can imagine. And I know what everybody's thinking, oh, he deserves it. He did this and that. And he very well may. I mean, this could be justice for him. But, just because someone is an extremely selfish individual, it doesn't mean that they can't have an inherent love for their children, by example. You know, I mean, you can't tell me that everyone that's ever been in jail or prison doesn't love their children. You can't tell me that. Of course, you have an inherent love for your child. Now, you're a selfish bastard that just, self pleasuring, did whatever you had to do and stepped on as many faces as you need to get what you wanted. You can absolutely be an extremely selfish person, but still have a feeling of love for your children, a feeling that you want to protect your children and things like that. And I think he has 7 kids, you know. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the guy doesn't love his children. One of those kids is like still a baby. And I look at that little girl. I'm like, as much of a horrible person that this guy is, I'm sure he loves that little girl. I'm sure he regrets the hell out of anything that he ever did, if not just for the reason of now that he can't be around his family. I'm not saying that he regrets it because he hurt people or he's sad that he hurt people. No, no, it's because he got caught and now he's in a place of misery because of what he did. He regrets it probably more for that reason, but either way. So they're saying he was noticeably thinner, grayer. I think the gray aspect of it, I noticed this happened to R. Kelly too when he got locked up. I think that just has to do with not being out on the outside, having access to your barber, having access to, getting your hair cut and your beard trimmed and getting everything colored and stuff like that. I mean, he's a 55-year-old guy. Most people who are 55, they've got some gray coming in. So I think the gray aspect of it is just him not having access to, you know, a barber and just for men hair color. I think that would probably be, but it very well could be. I think it's more like a wives' tale that stress can cause people to gray quickly. I do believe that's more like a wives' tale, but maybe not. I mean, everything can get chalked up to you know chemical responses and chemical reactions, and being gray is absolutely a chemical response. So could be that the stress is actually causing him to, become gray quicker. But I think that's just being locked up and not having access to the things that could cover or color the gray. As far as being thinner, you don't get to eat, as many meals as you want per day and all of the extra desserts and stuff like that he probably got to enjoy as a millionaire living out there independently. Now he's just getting the bare bones, probably doesn't have a lot of caloric value. It's probably just 3 meals a day. You know what they say, 3 hots in a cot, 3 meals per day, probably just basic, bare bones, just enough calories to for a human adult man to survive on, and then not really a lot of extras. Um, there have been some sources to say too that he's actually been exercising while he's in there. And if that's true, if he's doing that, then, taking in less calories and exercising, obviously that would explain the getting thinner. Or it could just be that he's depressed. Could just be that he's anxious. It could be that he's refusing certain meals. I know when he first got there, I think they were saying that he was doing that, like refusing to eat, refusing to, kind of outwardly communicate with anyone. I don't know that he's still doing that, but that was something that he was doing at first, according to reports. I did look for a picture on this. I was like, oh, come on, that would be great if we could actually see a picture. But there were no cameras or anything allowed in the courtroom. You know how it is. They're very, very tight lipped, closed doors sort of events and venues. So at this point, I'm sure we'll get to see, images of him later on, but there's no images. There's no images. So all we can do is just really talk about it. But I want to read one thing really quick that is related to people being incarcerated, and then we can kind of relate that to Diddy, because obviously he's incarcerated. Um, we often talk about the disturbingly high numbers of people with mental illness disorders locked up in prisons and jails, but less attention is paid to the ways in which incarceration itself perpetuates this problem by creating and worsening symptoms of mental illness. Research shows that while it varies from person to person, incarceration is linked to mood disorders, including major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. The carceral environment can be inherently damaging to mental health by removing people from society and eliminating meaning and purpose from their lives. On top of that, the appalling conditions common in prisons and jails, such as overcrowding and solitary confinement, can have further negative effects. Researchers have even theorized that incarceration can lead to post incarceration syndrome, which is similar to PTSD, meaning that even after serving their official sentences, people may continue to suffer the mental effects. And this is a quote from a doctor, Professor Craig Harvey, that actually studies the psychological and the physiological effects of imprisonment and incarceration, isolation, that sort of thing. And he says the prison environment is almost diabolically conceived to force the offender to experience the pangs of what many psychiatrists would describe as mental illness. Oof. Think about that. Let me read that one more time so you can really marinate on that. The prison environment is almost diabolically conceived to force the offender to experience the pangs of what many psychiatrists would describe as mental illness. So just the environment itself is actually forcing the prisoners to experience what mental illness is like, the isolation, I'm sure the sadness, being separated from your family. And I read in another article that being separated from family is what prisoners report as being the absolute worst aspect of it, right? I mean, thank God, bro. I had to spend about 4 hours in kind of a holding area one time when I was like 21, 22-year old kid, and got caught with some weed. And of course I got taken in. And now you just kind of get a ticket for that. It's been decriminalized in most places, but at this time it wasn't. I mean, it's just like a misdemeanor, but um, I wasn't even by myself. I was in like this big, huge room just with a bunch of other people that were being held as well. But even that for me was, I mean, I called one of my friends to come get me, and I literally like could not wait for him to get there so that I could get the hell out of there. I just hated being there. And like I said, I wasn't even in a cell by myself. I was just in kind of a holding area with a bunch of other people. But I'm telling you, I know that's one reason I don't live a life of crime, because I know I would not do well in that, sort of solitude and the solitary confinement sort of setting. Mm. And listen, let me be clear. Not that I feel bad for the guy, because if he's done all these horrible things to people, he is doing what they call reaping what he sowed right now. Okay, so I don't feel sorry for him, but you can kind of put yourself in the position of someone like that. And I like to do that sometimes. I like to imagine sometimes, what if I were in that position? You know, and then I think about the fact that he's also a multi millionaire several times over again. And, he had access to all these creature comforts and having the autonomy to do and spend and go wherever and whatever you want and all that stuff. That has to be infinitely worse for somebody who lived that life of luxury to now be in an 8 by 10 cell with a toilet and a cot, to where you can't do anything without asking or being told. That would be freaking horrible. It'd be freaking horrible. I'm sure it's making him rethink a lot of the decisions that he made. You know, Unfortunately for him, it's taken this. It's taken this to cause him to have to reconsider things. And, you can't feel sorry for the guy, because, I mean, and I'm assuming that at least a good portion of what he's being accused of has to be true, otherwise, or he wouldn't be there, right? And some of this other frivolous stuff that's being added every other day that, some of that obviously is not true, but the bulk of it, the racketeering and the sex crimes and stuff, he obviously did a lot of that. We saw him assaulting a woman on video, obviously. So, you can't feel sorry for the guy per se, but is something to think about, something interesting to think about. But anyway, what do you guys think? But tell me in the comments, what would incarceration and isolation like that do to you? It would mess me up. I know it would. Let me know down in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you would, and like the video. I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.